years now, and very appreciative to the city of Eugene and people like John for all the support they have given us in making it happen. This is public property owned by the city, so we're leasing this for $1 a year. We're counting on the council to renew that, Betty.
We might raise the rent.
Yeah, you might raise the rent, double it on us. Yeah. When we first approached the council with this, it was a 6-2 vote, and then when we renewed it a year later, Betty came up with a brilliant idea to extend it a few more months so we wouldn't be in the middle of winter when we had to renew it in case we couldn't renew it, and so now it renews annually on June 30th, if I remember right, and the vote was unanimous from the city council. So we even went over our two skeptics that weren't too sure this would work. First, I want to introduce you to our project director. I'll just say a brief word about some of the philosophy behind the self-governance model that we use. And then I'm going to introduce you to some of the villagers who are going to talk about different parts of the village. And we'll just walk you through. So Andrew Heben is our project director. He's the author of a book, Kid City Urban.
I've got some of the trailer.
Of course. So,
check it out.
it's a great book. So go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, this kind of all started for me as a thesis project in urban planning. I spent the summer visiting a number of tent cities and campuses around the U.S. Stayed in one in Ann Arbor, Michigan for a month and found some positive social dynamics going on there in terms of peer support, people working together to address their problems collectively, and also having meetings and making decisions democratically. And so rather than continue to disperse, evict, and isolate those people, looked at how can we build upon these positive social dynamics and improve the physical infrastructure, because obviously nobody wants to advocate for living in a tent long term. So we looked at how can we improve the physical infrastructure, and Opportunity Village is kind of an example of that after looking at some best case examples across the country of transitioning from the tent to simple micro-housing structures. So the houses you'll see here, they're basically detached bedrooms. They're not hooked up to utilities, but we have a common bathroom, common kitchen, a common gathering area that are hooked up to utilities. And so it was a one-year pilot project, so it's been extended for a couple of years, but everything's designed to be temporary and moved. So we'll show you that here in a minute, and then we're also working on plans for Emerald Village, which is kind of the next iteration of this, where the houses will be, around 160 to 280 square feet, and each will have a small bathroom, a small kitchen in it. So we'll show you some plans for that as well.
So I'd like to say this is a gated community. Why should the rich be the only people who get gated communities? And that really is critical to the success of this project, that the village has the ability to control its borders, and only those who are approved to be here can be here. And that has worked very well. One of the requirements of the city when we started with this was that we had to have a security firm, because they didn't want us calling 911 to deal with all the problems that certain people were just sure that we would have. And after paying that security firm $250 a month to come and have coffee with us, I asked if we couldn't, release us of that expense, and the city said sure. So I've heard, I haven't looked at these statistics, but I've been told that we have fewer 911 calls from this property than most other neighborhoods, and the very few that we've had, I think I can count them on one hand in 2.5 years, have been domestic violence issues, couples getting in fights with each other, not problems between villagers. And so that's been one of our learnings of trying to be more proactive in working with couples living in very close relationships and how to help them with their issues. So as a gated community, first thing you have to do is check in. We're not going to require you all to do that today because it takes too long, but normally people check in, they get a visitor's badge and have to sign in. And we have someone at the gate 24/7. So I'll introduce Christina, who's our villager who's on duty this morning. She can tell you about the function of the gate.
We're a house, and this is 24 hours a day. At midnight, we walk the gate, so they definitely have to. We have a little doorbell where they can ring and be let in and check in and stuff like that. People call and we just take their messages and we forward them to Pastor Dan or anybody who it's for. Keep files in here, donations. We have a treasury in here. We do have a little cot, which is nice overnight because it's kind of hard to stay up all night long. But it's always locked, and we have a phone that everybody can call. And know what to say. It's just
You're
basically
good.
a security booth.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Any questions for her? Come on back.
Great.
We'll talk a little
Yes,
bit more
Barbara.
about
We do.
this.
Part of our agreement when we move in is that you do 8 hours of paid work a week,
Built
and you
deal
can
with
sign up in
donations.
2 hours.
We have so many people just stopping by and offering stuff to us. So that's our donation center. And why don't you just open the door? I just want to see how organized it is. But mostly it's clothing, small household items, and so villagers have access to that. Just becomes a great way to help facilitate all of those donations. Then we have our community area. Where's John? It's on the inside. This little structure is our most recent addition. Was built by students from Northern Idaho College who spent their spring break here. Built this structure and did a lot of cleanup for us and a few other minor tasks while they were here to provide for a gathering space. The trailer behind that is a utility trailer, a tool, what we call it, tool trailer, built by students at the University of Oregon. Workshop. They built it, outfitted it with tools, donated it to the village just to provide a place where people can repair their bicycles, a place to get tools to do various things around. Then we come into the community living room. Our yurt, made by Pacific Yurt in Cottage Grove.
Brian, I want to get one of these to live in Boulder. What, can you work on that for me?
I'm game.
Yeah, I looked at. There's one down in down by Salida or something that that makes these, and they've got like an 800 square foot unit.
Yeah.
I could totally, $30,000.
Yeah, a friend of mine has one down in Crestone that she lives in.
Yeah,
And she's actually building tiny homes for a living.
excellent.
Living in her dirt. Cool.
And these go up quick.
This is where we socialize, where we come for our weekly village meetings that we have every week. We have internet, we've got, a printer and stuff like that, so people can come in here and do job searching, so they can look for jobs, look for housing, stuff like that. It gets a little messy at times, but that happens. It's like our house. We have food on the table that we get once a week from Blaine County. We bring the goodies in here for people to, have some goodies. We've got games and movies back here for people to check out if they would like to. Any questions?
Tell a little bit more about the village meetings.
Village meetings. Okay, those are fun. They can be, how do I say? They can be hectic, yes. We have, if you see behind you, there's a board that says the agenda. Every week we have 2 council meetings, and there's certain issues or announcements like you guys coming that we talk about. We have committees and things like that we do, like Blaine County. We got gardening, treasury, and every week we come in and we tell people, okay, this is what's going on with like gardening, this is going on with Blaine County, this is going on with treasury. If there's anything important, business, I don't know what else to say.
And that's one of the key factors to our model, that being a self-governed village, that we set up the procedures and processes, the agreements that everyone agrees to when they come in, a covenant they all assign, no theft, no drugs, no alcohol, no persistent disruptive behavior, no violence, and then participating in the village meetings is a requirement. So everyone's expected to be here unless they have a doctor's excuse or they have a job.
Is this different from the rest stops? Do people stay here during the day?
Yes.
Yeah. So they can be here 24/7 if they need to be. But you won't see a lot of villagers here today because a lot of them are working and out and taking care of business. But yeah, they can be here.
How many people work there?
Andy?
I mean, it fluctuates.
My
Yes, you guys are
fiance, my fiance works. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've got 12 people, give or take, the time that I'm working on all the time.
And then piecemeal work. I have an associate who needed had a day job, needed some people helping around her house. So two of our villagers said, "Yeah, I'll go," and so they're out working right now with my associate.
My fiance is a roofer, so he's out on roofs all day, every day.
How many people live here, and who gets to live here?
33 to 35 on average. Have you been on the vetting committee?
I'm on vetting right now.
So explain the vetting committee.
What happens is we get a bunch of applications from people, and then Steve Gibson, he is not here today. What he does is he just background checks on everybody, and once they're approved, we have a waiting list of a certain amount of people. Of course, it can take some time to get in, but once we get down to a certain amount of people, then we call in 5 people, we interview them, and once we're approved for them, then they can come in. Once they're approved on vetting, they can come in, they get a shower for $1. They can do their laundry, they can get something to eat, they can come be in the village to get to know us. And they do that until they are in the village. And that's what we do.
And this is permanent?
Yes.
Well, no, it's not permanent
It's
housing.
transitional. Transitional. We like to get people moving, and because we have access to a bus pass, we have access to the Wiper community, which is health, occupied medical, everything like that, and they can help us with like finding a job, getting a house, and things like that, so that we can transition out here.
Everyone has a transition plan when they move in. We're asking them to give us their transition plan. You mentioned Whitebird. That's one of the social agencies that works with folk on the street. A staff person from Whitebird meets with each of the villagers, go over their transition plan to help them figure out, where they need to go, who they need to be talking to. We have one villager that's about ready to move out right now because when he did that evaluation with her, just learned about the BASH program for veterans and was able to get into that program. Yeah, 2. Okay, yeah. And so moving out here very shortly as a result of that.
The problem is trying to find housing. So as soon as they get a house, they will be transitioning out. We have 2 people on that
How
list.
long can you stay?
It's open-ended.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, as long as you're working on your transition plan is the kind of the basic requirement.
Is there an average?
Our average is probably about a year, 9 months to a year, I think. Andy.
I always say that it depends on the person. It ranges from a month to, we have some people that have been here since we opened, but we try to be accommodating and recognize that it's better for people to be here than on the street.
Yes. Like me personally, my transition plan is I sign up for Douglas County housing, and it takes anywhere from 6 months to a year, and I applied back in December. And you have to call at least once a month, and right now they say it's closer to a year. So I have about another 7 months, if not sooner, before we move, or I'd like to move into the new village. So,
We have another good example. We have one young woman who her transition plan is to get her college degree from the community college. And so she has been attending the community college now for the last 2 years, has another year to go, but she's working very hard on getting that degree.
Yep.
And it's made possible because of this. We have another one who transitioned out. Her plan was to also get a college degree, but to get accepted into a college program. And she was up in Portland State. She moved up to Portland, got her scholarship. But again, had she not been here, she never would have been able to go through all those steps in order to get that done.
It's a really great place to be in, very welcoming, very, people here like Dan and Andy and everybody that have made this possible for people. I'm going to get goosebumps, sorry if I don't cry, but it just makes it possible so that we can go from the streets into here and to take the necessary steps from being homeless to being in transitional housing, to be able to move on with their life, to get a house, to get a job, to move on with their life. And without this, we would not have that opportunity. We really wouldn't. And it's a really great opportunity.
Utility payments on the discussion?
Yep.
So talk about utility payments.
Utility payments is you're required to pay $30 a month to live here, and if you can't, like Dan said, he has people that needs help with their housing, stuff like that. You can go canning, you can go do yard work, you can do whatever you can to be able to pay it. We also have, you can do micro businesses, you can do fundraisers. Anything that you can do to raise money to live here is very much encouraged. And I would like to do a fundraiser to kidnap our pastors this summer.
They're working on me on
We
that.
haven't got that off the ground yet, but we're going to lock them in the Berkeley trailer, and then we're going to do a fundraiser and raise money for the village.
Thank you very much.
I did.
Yeah, Yeah. So yeah, we count on them to come up with those creative ideas. It costs us about $4 to $5 a night per person to operate this, and so the villagers themselves are paying one of that dollar. So we think it's probably the most cost-effective shelter program in the country. If you know of any shelter that's running on $4 a night, I'd be surprised. Anyway, why don't we walk on through and show you some more. Thank you, Connie.
Thank you very much. I met him up in January before my aunt took the trip up there, and I went up there for a weekend, and it was love at first sight.
Take the back door. Clever. Have you been out here before, Jason?
We've done that at a coffee company that was run on coral for
and money, lumber, donations, support, and so we started with 14 people, and for those first 9 months, we had somebody living in the tent the whole time while we built infrastructure for them, and the villagers themselves participated in all that. So it was about a little over $200,000 when you include the value of the in-kind donations and lumber and so forth.
I'm sorry, this is the beginning. What was the
We under $100,000 cash. Yeah, and putting a little bit more in lumber and other materials. So this is our kitchen area. It's an outdoor kitchen just because that's cheaper to build. And I'll let James describe what happens here.
All right, so right here we've got our food storage areas. We got the pantry, which this is where we put all of our food for Lane County donations. We go down every week with the banana boxes there in our little banana box cart that we found. And they're separated. There's a fridge and a freezer inside the pantry that we fill those up, and anybody's allowed to take an item out. They have to sign it out when they take it out on a little notepad. It's supposed to be just to sign out a meal. You can't just go take the whole fridge. Yeah. Or else somebody would.
No shopping bags.
Yeah, no shopping bags allowed. So we also have other storage bins for things like dry pasta, chips, breads, things like that. They have to be up on pallets. They can't be on the floor, as per the Food for Lake County's agreement that they have with us. And then these outside freezers are for personal storage. People have bags, little cloth bags with their names on them for their food. And we have a propane grill. Right now, we got a little ditch dug because they're going to be putting in some PVC piping to connect the propane to the grill instead of this rubber hose. They just have to get it together. Then, I remember the guy who built it, Alex, he came by one time and he was telling me the reason that they got, there are no walls here is because it was something with the fire marshal, he said. They told him that you couldn't have this outside like this, but if there were no walls, that would be fine, because then it would have, ways people couldn't get, caught and stuck inside or anything. If there was somebody over here and somebody right here working. And then this is the community kitchen. Inside is another fridge just like this one. That's where people can put their personal food. They have little plastic containers with their names on them. And you're allowed, I believe, 1 or 2 of them so that you don't take up too much space. There's a little heater in here for cooking when it's cold out, whenever it rains or anything like that. We have a bunch of shared appliances like microwaves, burners, a flat top grill, and crock pots and rice cookers for anybody to make any meals in. Sometimes somebody will
get in their mind, they'll be like, hey, I'm going to make a big meal for everybody. And it's like, all right, well, we have everything here. Just clean up afterwards is the main thing. And then, let's see. And then we just got these new shelf things from one of the villagers found them and decided, oh, this would be good to put the little pots, pans, and separate everything with. They were originally from like a fruit stand. All right.
So these units are basically in the bathroom are the powered area of the village. You will see some extension cords when we get into the living area, but otherwise, once we go past here, there's in theory no power, but there are some exceptions to that. Your shower has heat and power in it, and lights and so forth. So we'll come to that next. Something else I was going to say about the kitchen. Oh, when we built this, our original assumption, because I mean, so much of us operate from the large emergency shelter model, like the Mission, which does some really good work in this community, and we kind of made some assumptions about how we would prepare meals in the same way that they prepare them at the Mission. Well, the irony was that first group of villagers that came out, most of them actually came from the Mission, and one of the reasons was they didn't want to do community meals. They wanted to prepare their own food. And so that's been the case ever since. Everybody's responsible for their own food preparation. We do about once a week, there will be a community meal, particularly on the nights on our village meetings. Someone will prepare a meal for the whole community. Sometimes it's someone from the outside that comes in and prepares a meal. But otherwise, everyone's on their own for doing their own meals. So then we come to the bathhouse. And this was our one big learning. Well, we have many learnings along the way. But when we started with porta potties, and you know, we had one or two porta potties. We got more people, added another porta potty, and then we had to have a wheelchair accessible porta potty. We were paying $500 a month in porta potties, and we suddenly realized this is stupid. It's, you know, money down the drain, literally. And so the one advice we have to groups is build your bathhouse first to save that expense. And so this has 2 toilets, a shower, and a laundry facility. Each door has its own little room. And 1 shower and a 50-gallon water heater, believe it or not, serves 35 people. You'll see a clipboard on the left there where they each sign up for when they're going to take their shower. And that has worked out just fine. Same with the laundry facility. Every villager has bathroom responsibility. So you got 30-some villagers, so basically once a month your term comes around when you have to clean the bathroom. There are 10 hours that every villager has to put in, 2 hours in general duties in the village cleaning up, and 8 hours at the front gate.
They're not porta potties anymore? They're not sewage?
Yeah, we have no porta. It's hooked up to sewage.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. There's a sewer line and so forth. Yep.
That was already
water.
there?
Unfortunately, the infrastructure that was in here was pretty much toast. It used to be a mobile home park, but it hadn't been used for years. So basically, we had to start from scratch and run our own line out to the street.
Is that part of the $100,000?
Yes. Yep. 1 acre.
And do you feel like you're about at capacity, or do you feel like
We, by contract with the city, we're allowed 30 units. We've not built that 30th so that we have a little bit of flexibility. Like, well, we'll come to our guest house in a little bit, so that could be considered the 30th. And a maximum of 45 people. When we get into the living areas, you'll see we have some units intended for couples. If every single one of those units were populated with a couple, we would be closer to that 45 max.
if you have that agreement, would you feel like you could go higher, or do you think you're right?
I like this size. I mean, sure, maybe with good organization, but I would say this, that you need probably at least 25 to 30 in order to have enough staff to staff your front gate, for instance. Do all the tasks that you need to do. The larger it gets, the more complicated it gets. I would prefer to build a second one of these before I expanded this one greatly, just to keep it more manageable. But actually, we have a better plan that we'll talk about before we do that. Come back into the living area. Corey, where are you? Right back here. Okay, come up here. All right. You know, a lot of volunteers, similar to Habitat. Yeah, just a lot of community volunteers. Yeah. And what we found was we could not create enough building projects. We had so many volunteers, and we still do. You never have shortage of people who like to build. You know, you just give them the materials. They love the opportunities to build. So Corey is a resident. He'll describe a little bit about the living arrangements here.
Okay. The living arrangements that we have here are basically kind of structures. We have the Conestogas here, like this one, which I currently dwell in. And we also have what we call bungalows or tiny houses. The width of the Conestogas are 10 by 6. And the height, well, the height is like, you know, I got a little bit of headroom to stand up in the center. So now, I'm also on bedding. And so we like revamped bedding since I've been on it. And so now our model, even though it's flexible, it doesn't always have to be this way, but we try to put singles into the Conestogas. And also into the bungalows that are, if I remember right, the dimensions are 8 by 8.
Correct.
And that the couples bungalows are 8 by 10. Now, you know, we've had a little bit of flexibility in that, in bedding, in which, you know, it's like if there is a particular, if a person has a particular need that needs to come in here, that, you know, we have had couples in Conestogas and so forth, just to accommodate people here. And so the extra spot that we have here is, back here we have a tent for a gentleman who, we actually had a mix-up on our vetting process. And so this guy was invited in. And so since it was like our mistake, we didn't want to like ask the guy to leave. He was on our current waiting list to move in. And so with this extra spot, and my understanding is like the extra spot that doesn't have 30th is like right here, if I remember right, that Andy told me. Right? And so, but instead of using that area, we try to use the area back here where there's a little more grass, try to make it a little more comfortable as well. So around the structure, we have plenty of planter boxes. Some of those have fruits and vegetables, and then others are flower plants. So let's see, I think we have
9.
9 constables altogether, 7 on the side, and 2 over here.
Just gonna show close the edge of one of these.
So they're panelized. So we built bungalows run about $2,500. So this is built under the code for campgrounds, and under that code they have to be 10 feet apart for fire purposes. Yep.
You know, I have a shed, you know, that I just bought and assembled. I don't know what the size is, but it seems to me you could get a twin bed in. Would you know that? Or?
It's possible. Well, it depends on your shed. So let me point out, so this light colored one is an 8 by 8. So that's intended for a single. This yellow one is an 8 by 10. It's 2 feet wider. That's intended for a couple. And yeah, a lot of people ask, well, couldn't you just buy a shed at Home Depot kind of thing? What we found is the construction quality of the sheds just didn't quite meet our standard.
Right.
So these are a little higher, solid. They're built with 2x4s instead of one-dimensional. A lot of sheds are built with one-dimensional. And they're just solid structures.
Are they insulated?
Yes, and they're all insulated and paneled on the inside. A lot of folks have shelves and various things that they've built themselves inside. Bed platforms so that they can store things underneath their beds. You've got to be very creative in terms of storage. You've only got little spots. I don't know, Corey. How's your spot? You want to open your door? Sure. You can show you inside. I don't know if we have another villager around that would be. villager is here. Yeah. Okay. All right. We're gonna have. I want to. We need to get to the end. We've only got 5 minutes. Oh, okay. All right. Come on up, but we got to show you the next project. Just briefly, that's about it. So different villagers have different talents and things they do to make money. This particular guy's a bicycle repairman, as you might guess, all the bicycle parts, and he actually collects parts out of dumpsters and like, and builds bicycles and then sells them as a way to support himself.
Yeah. Looks native too. We have a very
Looks what?
looks native.
Oh yeah.
I assume.
Where his artist was.
Right.
I think it's funny when he
Let me
says
just
there's
invite
people love to
peek
build
your
because
head
I
inside
can't
here and
cut
take a quick look
a
at the drawings on
straight
the walls
edge to save
for
my
our
life.
next project, which is our permanent housing, Emerald Village, Eugene. 150 to 250 square feet. 12 different architects have designed tiny homes for us. If you want to see what those designs look like, you can peek in and get out of the doorway so people can see it. And we'll give you a brochure as well that talks about it. You can go ahead and walk in. Emerald Village, Eugene, the idea was because we found it was so difficult for many of our villagers who have income to find an affordable place to live if they didn't have a Section 8 voucher, we decided we're going to build our own. So these tiny houses will be permanent, and the rent structure is $250 to $350 a month. It includes all fees, maintenance, and a share. There'll actually be shareholders in a co-op, the limited equity partnership co-op, where they have a share that's worth $1,500, and that share value increases with interest as they make their payments on time. So it gives both the benefit of being a part owner, not a full owner, but at least they're a part owner. But yet the price structure is such that it's low enough that someone who only has $800 in monthly income can afford to live there without having to depend on other public support. So we already have our property that we purchased last year, and we're about ready to submit the site plans to the city for review to start building those late this summer and early fall. And then we will move those villagers who have income, can make those payments into that project, as well as other programs in the city. People who have successfully completed a transitional program will be eligible to live at Emerald Village, Eugene, and thereby free up the bed space to move more folk off the street into this program or to whatever program they came out of. It is a special zone that it allows for commercial or residential, so we were fortunate. Yeah. They didn't have to in this particular case.
It's going to be a multifamily residential development that detached rather than
And that was, yes. Yeah, they will have full bath. And actually, if you want, got time, stick your head into it. This is the smallest that we can build. This is 120 square feet. It meets the definition of a dwelling unit under the 2015 International Residential Code. So at the back, you can see where the toilet and shower would go, and there's a space for a bed. This hasn't been plumbed or electrified, but you can get the idea. We just built it as to see what it would be like to have a tiny home. Most of our units will actually be twice that size, but it gives you an idea of the tiniest that you can build and still be considered a legitimate dwelling unit.
And
they will be slab on grade, permanent foundation.
so what would be the total cost once you get plumbing, electricity, and everything?
So the cost of building the tiny homes, we value these at about $25,000, $15,000 in materials, $10,000 in labor, roughly. We built this one for $15,000, for instance. Add in the land cost, site development, We project that we will complete this project for roughly $60,000 per unit. That includes the common facilities, whether a yurt or something similar to that, and office space and the like that will be on site. You know anything about affordable housing, I'm sure some of you do. Typically, it's $150,000, $200,000 per unit. Or more, particularly when you include the land. Usually that doesn't include the land, and ours does. So we're producing permanent housing for about a fourth of what most affordable housing projects cost. In fact, we just got, at what density? So it's an acre of land. We're actually, the residential portion of this, there's a drawing of that you can look at, is about 3/4 of an acre, 22 units, probably about half of them will be couples, so you're looking at 30, 35 people that will live on that 3/4 acre. And then the common area. So what is that our R2? Yeah. And the city's been great working with them, coming up with this concept of detached multifamily. It's a concept we created, but it works well, so that we can build tiny houses without having to have the limitation of 9,000 square feet per home, typically. In most developments.
Did you fit within existing zoning, or did
Yes.
council? Okay.
Yep. Yeah, we didn't have to do anything for this particular zone, and that's one of the reasons why we bought this piece of property. It was zoning that allowed for a lot of flexibility.
Thanks.
Why wouldn't it be cheaper to, use mobile housing that, it's kind of antiquated, but put it down and remodel it with that?
It might be. I mean, we just qualified for a grant. We just got a $150,000 grant from the Meyer Memorial Trust, which is a big foundation in Oregon, and they put out an RFP for affordable housing. They call it their Affordable Housing Initiative, to create new models for cheaper affordable housing. And a couple of the projects are using modular kinds of concepts, so not mobile, but modular concepts to try to bring that cost down. We were the only bidder that came in offering the tiny home concept as a different way to bring that cost down. And so we're all going to be doing these projects and testing them and see how they work. They're actually funding us for the next project after Emerald Village that we're going to build in the rural community of Bonita, taking what we learned from Emerald Village, packaging it in what we're calling the toolbox that we will then make available to other communities. That here's all the resources that you need in order to build a tiny house village. So look for that in late 2017. That'll be a resource that's available for other communities to use. Mia's
yes, I'm giving you
crowding
the
in on
high.
me.
Yes.
Crowding in on me.
Dan, I want to thank you very much. Thank you very much for your part today. We always appreciate your willingness to share information.
You bet. Great to have you here. We hope you will do the same, and we are glad. In fact, we are working with a number of different communities already, developing affiliate relationships in some cases where they will work under our nonprofit, or just providing consultation and how to structure, how to develop, and just giving people tips and guidelines for doing this kind of thing. So we're always glad to share that information.
So have you worked with Habitat affiliates?
Not directly. There's a Habitat project in North Carolina that actually, in their news article I read, said they were modeled after us. And we know the Habitat people here, and we've talked with them, and so there's some overlap, but there hasn't been a real close relationship.